Hey everyone, welcome back to TheTopher Drives, where tonight I thought we would go on a bit of an ambient night drive in this 2024 Volkswagen Golf R. You guys all will have seen the commute video from a couple of weeks ago where we kind of just did our traditional little drive review with this Mark 8 Golf R, but I thought tonight we would just go for a bit of a chill drive and I'll give you some final thoughts on this thing, on what it's been like to live with this week, and my thoughts on the last year of the Mark 8 Golf R. Of course, next year for 2025, they are ditching the 6-speed manual transmission. They're putting a bigger screen in this car, and it's going to receive a little bit of a power bump and some different trims and things, but we are due for a mid-cycle refresh, and unfortunately that means killing the 6-speed manual. So this will probably be the last time I drive one of these unless I own one someday, which I don't really know if it's the car for me, but we'll kind of talk about that as we go for a drive. This will be similar style to the Lexus GX night drive we did a couple of months ago. Probably won't do a ton of talking. We'll let you kind of listen to the natural noises of the car. But before we do that, let's walk you around this thing just briefly. I'm actually going to fire it up so I can show you the headlights so they actually stay on without me having to hit the key every time. And then once we quickly walk around it, we will take it for a drive. So outside of the car, the first thing you notice when you get out or when you're stepping in is we have the R logo projected onto the ground. And if you can get past all of the bings and bongs and the car being upset that I have the key in my pocket right now, it's a pretty elegant little lighting setup that we have here. Just kind of this long strip DRL that goes across the front of the car that a number of other manufacturers are kind of copying, like the Ford Escape, the new Blazer EV that we're also coincidentally driving this week. They all kind of have the same little DRL setup on the front. I do like the design of these taillights as well. Little upside down L's almost. We've got some lighting back here for your cargo. If you're getting things in and out at night, you can do so. Door handles light up as well as you approach the car. Overall, pretty good lighting inside, good visibility getting in and out of the Mark 8 Golf R. The funniest thing about this car is that the climate control up front does not light up at night, but the climate control in the back does. So do what you want with that information, but that is the way of the Mark 8 Volkswagen Golf. Okay, before we jump up front, let's just give you some quick basics on this thing. 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, 315 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque. If you opt for the 7-speed DSG though, you get 295 pound-feet of torque. This thing's about 47 grand. If you opt for the DSG, you're just below $50,000. I imagine those prices will climb a little bit for 2025. So if you're after one of these, if you're after a manual, it is your last chance to get one. This one is finished in lapis blue, but if you don't like that, you can also have it in black or white. That's it. The Golf R is, of course, all-wheel drive. Goes without saying, and this one, for the 4th time, I think, in this video, has the 6-speed manual transmission. We've got a bit of ambient lighting inside. We've got these nice sport seats that kind of remind me of Porsche 911 seats. Bit of this kind of faux carbon fiber R badging on there, and there's almost like this blue under the perforation. The Golf R theme has kind of always been blue all the way back to the original R32 back in 2003. We do have an active exhaust in this car, a number of drive modes. I've got my custom mode set up to everything in comfort with the exhaust in loud mode. It doesn't make a ton of noise, to be completely honest, but when you're under load, when you let off the gas from around 3,500 to 3,000 RPM, you do get some fun little pops and burbles from this exhaust system. It is still a bit of the businessman's hot hatch in the way that nothing in here is really in your face. It's definitely not as rowdy as some of the competition, like the Hyundai Elantra N or say the GR Corolla, even the Civic Type R, I would go as far to say. But a lot of things in here do still remind you that you are in a hot hatch. Perforated thick leather steering wheel, an R button on the steering wheel, 6-speed manual transmission. I've got my boost gauge, I've got my G meter, I've got my big central mounted tach here on the digital cluster. But if you don't like this display, there are like 6 other ways you can see this cluster, and they all look pretty dang nice. Though I will say my favorite is this one. Let's get these windows rolled up. Kind of some loud window motors on this thing. We'll shut the sunroof, which is a swipe, kind of like a Volvo. Volkswagen, would it have killed you to put one physical button in this thing for the sunroof? I think maybe it would have. I got a comment on my commute video saying that the blue on this infotainment system is terrible. And while the good news about that is you can switch it to any color you want with this ambient light button, and you can switch the theme of your entire infotainment, gauge cluster, everything. So I've got this in orange right now, single color, whatever. That makes everything orange. So this is kind of like the classic European luxury interior color. So if this is your thing, you are able to make it whatever color you want, orange, blue, whatever. We'll probably stick with blue today, or maybe sort of like a darker blue, almost over to purple, maybe. You can also do a split, which means the lower portion of the ambient lighting will be a different color. So why don't we do like a little blue and purple situation here for our ambient lighting? We'll keep it kind of true to the Golf R and keep it blue. Otherwise, you guys know how I feel about this infotainment system. I don't really feel like I need to talk about it a ton in this video. If you guys are after a super in-depth review of this car, I've got a couple other videos on this thing on my channel, also over on the TheTopher channel. He's got a number of videos on this thing as well. But if you're here to just kind of hear what this car sounds like and see what it looks like at night, well, then here you go. Let's go out on the road. We'll drive this to downtown Ann Arbor, and then I'll give you some final thoughts at the end once we enter the parking structure. Reverse camera situation is pretty nice at night, to be honest. Pretty high resolution and a wide enough angle. Very quick steering, very quick rack. It's only, what, 2 turns lock to lock, so movements in parking lots happen very quickly. The steering has a nice weight to it as well when it's in its comfort setting. Not too light, but there's enough heft for hot hatchery even in comfort mode. No auto rev matching in this Golf R. You got to do everything yourself. You have to actually drive your manual transmission. Got some auto brights in this car. Only mildly blinded that person, but they blinded me too, so it's okay. Auto brights seem to work well. Kind of learned how to make this thing pop and burble this week. There's a science to it. sometimes on the down rev you can blip the throttle a couple of times between 3,000 and 4,000 RPM. That's when you get your loudest pops. I learned that trick in college in my buddy Kyle's Volvo S60R. It's the way to get it to pop and burble the loudest. Let's talk about this manual transmission before we jump on the highway. Is it best in class? No. Does it really give me the fizz? Am I super engaged with it? Not really. I appreciate that this car does still offer a manual transmission. Well, I guess it does through this year and then it's gone. But I appreciate that I am able to enjoy this one last time. It's not the most engaging. It's a little bit rubbery. You know, I'm like not super inspired by this shifter. I just drove the TheTopher's Honda Civic Type R earlier today, and it kind of reminded me what a manual transmission should feel like, especially in a newer car like this. Not to mention, this shift knob is massive. It's a really big thing. If you've got small hands, you may struggle in this car a little bit. But luckily, shift knobs are very easy to replace. Lots of aftermarket options for you. Put this into sport mode as we merge onto the highway. Tighten things up, sharpen things up a bit for us. The limits in which you could push this car are really astounding, and it's a bit bizarre because when you're just driving this car day to day, it's a pleasure in situations like this, in a commute where you're just kind of eating up the highway miles. It's quiet, it's refined, it's forgiving, it's borderline floaty on the highway. Speaking of that, we're going to jump back into my custom mode, soften up the suspension a bit, but when you push this thing to the limit, when you're driving it like above 8/10, it almost unlocks this entire new chapter of Golf R, this entire new segment of this car that you didn't even know existed, to where it turns into an absolute lunatic. And a lot of this has to do with the clever rear differential that can send 100% of the 50% of the power to either of the rear wheels. Proper trick all-wheel drive system in this car. The TheTopher took one of these ice racing and autocrossing a couple of years ago and won just about everything there was to win at the events. And that's not surprising because this thing can boogie. I know I said earlier it's the businessman's hot hatch, and I do stand by that still, but when you want to push this thing, it will deliver. Now, I'm not saying it's dramatic. I'm not saying it's going to snap really hard and pop and burble with the exhaust and everything like that, but it will deliver, it will handle, and it does everything you'll want it to do. I can figure out how to make this cruise control work. I do hate these. There we go. Thank you so much. I do hate these haptic controls on the steering wheel. The good news is for 2025, these are going to be reconfigured so they aren't as sensitive. great torque from this 2-liter in as low revs as 3,000. I mean, 6th gear, 70 miles an hour, rev just below 3,000 RPM. And if you want to make a pass, you don't have to downshift. You've got plenty of torque. As you guys have been able to observe, obviously this $47,000 Volkswagen Golf isn't the quietest car on the market, but I would say that it's the quietest and comfiest in its class. I've been trying to engage myself a bit more this week with this car and trying to have a bit of fun around town, but I don't find this car to be as fun to drive in city settings, if that makes sense. Like, I don't have like a huge desire to be flying around, weaving traffic and being a menace in this hot hatch. It feels too mature for that, and I don't know that I super love that. I mean, obviously, this Mark 8 has a bit more, I don't know if I want to go as far as to say soul, but it has a bit more character than the Mark 7, the previous generation. But at the end of the day, it is still a Golf R. It is still the executive's hot hatch. That kind of leads me into my main point with this car, and it's that I kind of just haven't bonded with it this week. Yes, I've had some fun here and there. I like the way it looks. It's cool to show people, yes, I'm driving a Golf R, yes, how fun. People like the Golf R, but I haven't I haven't bonded with it. I'm not going to be sad when it goes away tomorrow. The only thing I'll be sad about is that, well, it's the last manual transmission one of these that I'll drive, but I'm more sort of sad for philosophical reasons, not because I'm really going to miss this exact car. And I think it's overall because it does kind of lack that bit of rowdiness, that bit of soul, that bit of imperfection in the driving nature of this vehicle. I mean, you get in an Elantra N and it barks and snorts and the engine hits the firewall because the motor mount is much too soft and the shifter's sloppy, and it's just, on paper and on track, it's not as good of a car as the Golf R, but that's why I like it. That's why I like that car. It's a little bit of a handful. You have to learn its foibles and things, whereas this is just, I don't know, it's like cheating. It's too easy. Let's drop our windows. Let's open the sunroof. And let's turn the climate control off so the car does not yell at me in the Eco Tips menu. How about that? Show you guys what this navigation screen looks like. Couple little spicy noises there. Beetle looks to be the same color as my car. You are able to rev match first, slot yourself in there around 15 miles an hour. What I think it is. Oh, I am so happy. That is my favorite generation of BMW 7 Series, the E38, of course. I think I should have one of those. Alright, let's loop this thing back around. We'll go up the parking structure, and that'll wrap it up for us on this little night drive in the Golf R. Goodbye, my sweet prince. I have run out of burbles for the night.
Welcome. Please proceed into the lot.
Alright, let's try and make some noise here. Couple little baby ones. I swear this car can tell when I want it to make noise, and then it does not. Get some good boost noises here and there from this as well. Maybe it's because I've called it a businessman this entire video, and now it's saying, you will not have your cheeky exhaust noises. I think that's all we're gonna get. Stop, go into neutral, and try and like reset things here. There we go, a little bit better. Alright guys, well I don't think we're going to go all the way to the roof because I would like to wrap here while I have some lighting. So why don't we wrap it up right here? We'll give you one last look at this Mark 8 Golf R. Again, if you want to learn more about this car, you want to see a commute, you want to see some actual driving in this thing, I do have 2 other videos on this car on the channel, so I will link those below if you are curious in seeing them. But as for tonight, as for our little night drive, that is going to wrap it up. So thank you all so much for joining me today in this little chill little night cruise thing. If you have any questions about the car, leave them in the comments. I will do my best to get back to you. That's going to do it for us today. Again, thank you guys all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.